with Linda Shanda here about planning for the unexpected, expected, inevitable. And why this is so timely is I don't know about y'all, and tell me in the comments how you feel, but I've been fucking exhausted. I'm just now getting out of the last maybe month of feeling it. But this pandemic, especially towards the end, when you're a hyperachiever, if you haven't checked out Adam Grant's Languishing, how he's saying like a lot of people that went really hard in the pandemic, now they're like, oh my God. So I'm super excited about this. It's about like how you set those structures in place, because let's say if you do want to break, having that plan in place is amazing. But also beyond that, there is no silver bullet for entrepreneurship. And if there's any event, program, whatever telling you that, please run for the hills. It's just, that's bullshit. Um, this is really important because there's going to be so many ups and downs. There is no silver bullet, but it's about really pulling from your arsenal, and taking whatever you have, personally and in your business, and starting where you're at and doing as much as you can to get momentum forward while getting support. And that's exactly why we even started Get Shit Done, is that there is no silver bullet. There is no investor that's going to save you. There's none of that. If you don't have your ducks in a row, it doesn't matter. So I'm excited about this conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Shanda and Linda to formally introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm Linda Ruffenach, and I actually own a company called Executive Value Advisors. And what I do is I help business owners, what I like to call, achieve total world domination. And that starts with first understanding what it means to you, because everybody's version is completely different, and really looking at where you are today and how you get to where you ultimately want to be. And that begins with understanding the value of your business, looking at the things that are really going to drive value in your business, and kind of create the plans and the strategies to get there. I want business owners to be prepared and ready to leave their business if and when they want to, or even some of those cases when they don't plan to, that at least are able to do it under their own conditions. So I'm really excited to be here. I am a huge fan of Alex. I just loved when I first saw the name of it, Get Shit Done, because that was kind of my nickname in my prior life. So get her done, girl. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to be here with my good friend Shanda.
Good afternoon, Alex. Thank you for sharing this platform. It's awesome to have the opportunity to be here today. What we wanted to cover, I'm Shanda McFadden. I'm a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch. I was a commercial lender for a number of years before transitioning over, and just kind of taking the best of both of those worlds, combining that knowledge and information to help as many business owners as I can, especially women-owned businesses. Today, Linda and I are going to introduce you to the idea of total world domination and what that means. And then we'll talk about 5 common events that prevent us from achieving that total world domination, and then explore the various tools available to you to help plan around those unexpected events.
So, all of us know that, we've all run into those unexpected events, and 2020 was probably the best example I can think about of who the hell would have thought this would have happened. And, a lot of times this last year's kind of tested our resilience and our ability to adapt and kind of redirect. And as you've probably seen, a lot of the pandemic has really impacted women and women-owned businesses and women in all parts of the economy. And, when you look at the industries that it impacted, you understand why women were so impacted with travel, hospitality, education. You had healthcare, you've got services and retail. And really women-owned businesses became a big part of where they had some challenges. And, women have always had challenges with getting capital, trying to finance their ventures. And what happens is, because they're undercapitalized, that makes them particularly vulnerable during certain situations like we've had this last year, because they're less likely to have reserves of capital. Their dependence on when the income is low, and to get through when their income is down. And on top of that, we also spend a lot of time taking care of everybody else around us. Does that sound familiar? That we tend to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. And so part of what today is we want you to take care of yourself. That's the whole thing. And taking care of yourselves in those ways that you're expected to, and also those things and preparing for when things are unexpected. And then there are some things that are inevitable that you don't think are inevitable, but they're going to happen. And we'll touch a little bit upon that as we kind of get through this. So I'm going to let Shanda kind of go through the agenda with you, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Perfect. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk specifically about this idea of total world domination and what it means to you. So everyone's situation is very different. So you will have a custom idea of what that means. And we'll give you an opportunity to even start sketching that out. We'll talk about the reality of the 5Ds, and those are, divorce, death, some of the things that we'll talk about that are inevitable. We all have to face them. We'll work on creating a personal financial statement and get you, familiar with that process and answer any questions that you have there. And then we'll spend a lot of time talking about understanding your business value and the different levers that impact that value one way or the other. And then finally, we'll give you some tips on protecting your legacy. We thought we would do that by using a case study to kind of talk through everything. Maybe there's some similarities into your own life or your own situation, but we're going to introduce you to Carla. Carla was a young single mother. She decided to go back to college when she was around 24. She graduated top of her class with a business degree, and upon graduation, couldn't find a job. Stressed out about her student loans and all the other things that come along with being unemployed at that time. She was willing to take any job, including picking up trash around a construction site, which is exactly the opportunity that she was presented with. The owner of the company, a woman, also was impressed with Carla's work ethic and her ability to keep up with the boys. The owner was looking for someone to support her and the business by running errands, managing paperwork, etc. And Carla jumped at the opportunity, realized that she loved construction management and excelled at it. She spent the next 9 years learning everything she could. Eventually, the owner sold the company, and Carla decided it was time to step out on her own, as many of you have done, and founded her own construction management company. Now she can proudly say she's in her 10th year of business and has grown the company to over $2 million in revenue. She's 47 now. Her son is out of her home, living on his own, but she has a daughter that's a senior in high school. Who is preparing to go to a prominent college out of state. And we know how expensive that can be. Despite her success, Carla is stressed. Does she have enough for her daughter's college tuition? Does she have enough to rebuild her retirement saving from a divorce that took place 2 years ago? And that's just two of her financial goals. The big question for Carla right now is, how does she get it all done?
Carla's like a lot of women, and I'm sure there's some of you on this phone that may actually describe, maybe not the exact situation, but maybe have some of those similar experiences. And, like I mentioned earlier, we do as women, we tend to take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves. For her, it was first her son, then her husband, her daughter, her aging parents, her employees. And every day she wakes up thinking about those team members that she has. She actually has 8 employees. And she thinks about their livelihood and how to protect them. And especially during COVID, spent a lot of time stressing about how does she take care of everybody else. Her business came to a screeching halt, as a lot of our businesses did last year. And she had to make the tough decision to actually stop paying some of her team members. And as business owners, we know how hard that is when we have people on our team that we love, that we're loyal with, and then all of a sudden we're faced with, who do we pay? And do we pay the rent? Do we pay the utilities? Do we pay the people around us? And a lot of times we forego what it is that we should be doing and taking care of ourselves. She did a pretty good job of holding everything together, but she ended up having to let a couple people go during the middle of the pandemic. And as you can imagine, that was just really weighed heavily on her. And so, she spent every waking moment when she wasn't homeschooling, because she still had to homeschool her daughter, worrying about her business and really worrying about money. And for her she kept thinking about, what do I do next? Like, what if this doesn't work? What happens? And so a lot of what she did is during this time, she was just trying to tread water. And so she dipped into her savings. really deeply before the PPP loans came out. She didn't even know where to go for PPP loans because she had self-financed most everything that she had. And she was actually in the middle of taking out money out of her 401k before she actually figured out where and how to get this PPP loan. The good news is that her business has started to catch back up. She's got several new opportunities in the pipeline, and that's going to allow her to keep her team in place. But she's still working harder than ever. And if this story sounds familiar, it describes a lot of women out there right now, is that they went through a lot of valleys in this last year. They're working harder than they ever have before, and they're taking home less than they ever did before. And they're basically, their savings have taken a big hit. And she took care of everybody else. And she was the last one to take, just how many of us are the last one to take the last piece of pie? Or that we take the last gift under the tree, or we make sure everybody has the same number of gifts. I know that's my stressor every Christmas is, do both kids have the same number of gifts? Taking care of my husband before I take care of myself. And for a lot of women, when it comes to money, it's even a bigger problem. We don't do a good job of taking care of ourselves. And that's part of our mission today, is to help really talk about money, because as women, we don't talk about it often enough.
And that comes through in a lot of the statistics that you see. A lot of the statistics that piss me off, and I'm sure piss you off as well, but and they're not great. Women have 32 cents on the dollar in wealth compared to their male counterparts. That figure is even more staggering for African American women at 6 cents on the dollar. As business owners, we are all less likely to take money out of our businesses for ourselves, and often focus on the well-being of those around us and neglect planning for our own retirement. Most business owners believe they can fund their retirement by selling their company, yet most of them don't know what the value of their business or the levers to pull to impact that value. I saw this as a commercial banker, and I see it even more now as a financial advisor. I'm very passionate about the work and have been fortunate enough to meet someone equally as passionate and super fun to be around. Linda and I are both certified exit planning advisors. So essentially, we focus on the business, personal, and financial planning necessary to get a business and its stakeholders ready for new ownership. We met at the beginning of the pandemic after taking a course on exit planning. Our relationship quickly grew beyond that as we bonded over shared pandemic experiences, teaching high school geometry to our sons at home, sharing our office space with spouses and all the drama that comes along with that. But we also started to share tips on how we work with one another and focus a lot on kind of the gaps that we've seen in our work and how we can come together to fix that. And believe me, Linda has a lot of insight that she brings to the table. So having grown and, oh, I'm sorry, Linda. Having grown and exited a $100 million business herself, Linda has the ability to jump into a business, learn the culture, the strengths, and identify opportunities for increased business value. More importantly, she is committed to making sure women and minority-owned businesses have access to expert support and resources, and they're prepared for their growth or exit. She's built a community of business owners, open and willing to share real-life stories, growth, and failures. Together, I think we're superheroes. We come together and we help business owners maximize the value of their companies and turn that value into personal wealth.
So as Shanda shared, there's a lot of staggering statistics out there that were things that we both learned together as we kind of went through our certification. The ones that surprised me as a business owner and someone who's been in business for 20 plus years is that, more than 2/3 of, or more than 3/4 of business owners have no idea. They plan to transition their business in the next 10 years, yet they have done nothing to prepare. And that 3 out of 4 of them profoundly regret selling their business 1 year later. And this was a statistic that kind of blew me away, is that 75% of business owners are really upset after they sell their business. And there's 2 big reasons. The first thing is they didn't get what they thought their company was worth. they had a number in their mind and a number that they were planning on getting that would actually fund their retirement and get them to where they wanted to be. But the second thing is they hadn't planned for what they wanted to do afterwards. And that planning includes, one, understanding what does that next chapter look like? Because if you've been running a business, and you guys know what it's like to run a business, you know, it's not just a full-time job, it becomes a big chunk of your life. And when that big chunk of your life kind of goes away, you're kind of like, well, what do I do? And it's really hard to stop and do nothing. You know, the idea of sitting on a beach for a little while sounds exciting for, you know, it sounds conceptually great, but there's a lot of, you know, you don't have much to do. You can only do that for so long. The other thing is that they also haven't planned out what they need to retire and know what that number is. They think they know what that number is. And you may even work with a financial planner, but if you put the wrong estimation for your business value in that financial plan, you're going to find yourself in a place that you don't expect to be. And the other thing is, a lot of times financial planners will put that number saying, oh, your business is worth $1 million. Well, your business may be worth $1 million, but that doesn't mean when you sell your business, you're going to net $1 million. There's a big difference between what you sell your business and what you'll actually get out from a net proceeds standpoint.
So now let's jump into it, right? Let's start. What did we do with Carla? So the first thing that we wanted, Carla had quite a bit going on. She's running the business. She has her daughter, and she's thinking about retirement. So the first thing we did is that we asked Carla to define her idea of total world domination and what that meant to her. And so we're going to ask you to do the same thing. I know that you all are busy, and so it's nice to have the opportunity to do something like this. So I'm going to stop talking and actually give you 2 to 3 minutes to describe on a blank sheet of paper what total world domination means to you. When all of your different, the business, the financial aspects, your personal life are all working together for one goal, what does that look like for you? So I'm going to stop talking and give you 2 minutes.
Is it possible to discuss it out loud?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
I would love for someone to volunteer and say what total world domination is for them. I know this is something we do with Get Shit Done founders before we even start working on their traction strategy, is that they have to talk about their North Star. But the North Star is typically, what is that impact? And that's legacy, that's for your families, for your communities, so on and so forth. So I'm actually going to pick on Allie since she just popped in, because Allie, I think, has a really good North Star. Allie?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Hi.
Hi, I'm in the field, so I apologize if the connection is spotty. Total World so my business is Dynamic Waters. We're a construction company that specializes in helping folks harvest rainwater and steward that rainwater. For us, total world domination means that we are helping our BIPOC community harvest and steward the rainwater that lands on their property. And we're doing that through methods of food justice and helping them grow their own food and keep low bills for their water use by harvesting the rainwater.
Can I follow up on that, Allie?
For sure.
And so for you personally, what in your business, what would it look like for you to have this business be successful?
For this business to be successful, I would have a crew that is installing 16 projects a month in certain targeted communities. It would look like me, the business owner, being at the front of the business and not in the field, and meeting with policymakers to redirect the funds that is geared towards managing stormwater into the hands of those who are disproportionately impacted by water pollution.
Awesome.
So,
and is Is there anything from if your business does successfully, or when it does very successful, and it's very successful from a financial perspective, what would that look like for you, or what would that feel like for you?
Sure. So that would look like um, me making 200,000 a year from the business. That would look like the business itself um, bringing in like 500,000 a year, um, and that would look like um, us, having an overhead that's less than 40%. I'm sorry, not an overhead. Like our costs for materials and all that sort of stuff is like 40% or less of the project.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. Let's
Sure.
Can
get
I ask one follow-up question to that? So by doing that, what personal goals do you have? Like, how does it feel to you? I mean, your business is obviously there's a lot vested in the business, but is there a piece of this that's related to just you, not necessarily tied to your business, but this will enable you to do something else in your life or to have an impact in some way? What's that look like?
Gosh. That would look like me being debt free. That would look like me working 15 hours a week of admin because I'm a master delegator at that point. And it would be me vacationing at least twice a year internationally.
So that vacationing piece and that personal piece is the part that I've noticed in my work that doesn't get enough attention. And what does that life look like for you? And so when we think about Carla's idea of total world domination, she's encompassing a lot of those business goals, but we've also pushed her a little bit to talk about some of the family goals. She has a passion for photography, so pushing her to tease out what that actually looks like for her and how much time she wants to spend in that area, so that we're building out a plan that allows for her to do that as well. So when we think about total world domination, we want to think about not just the business being successful, which we know it will be, but also that quality of life that you're looking for as well. So being able to define that along the way.
Well, and one of the things that, I'm a big believer in is vision boards. And one of the things that I'll do once a year is actually go out on Canva, which if you haven't discovered Canva is like the greatest tool, but also the greatest distraction. But the one thing is actually kind of drawing out what do those big things look like, not just for my business, but also for me personally. And I'll share with you real quickly. I don't know if you'll be able to see because I've got it in share, is that I actually have it printed on like a cardboard thing, and I have it on my desk so that I kind of have a pictorial of what does that look like for me. It just helps me remember those things that are important, also what I'm working towards. And that's where sometimes when it comes to, when you can start to step back and not worry so much, the numbers are a big part. They're going to be the means, and you kind of really hit upon it, Alec, from the standpoint, it's all about time, money, and freedom. And that's a lot of what we're all trying to work towards. We're trying to work towards having enough time, enough money, and freedom to do the things that we want to do in life. So, as I mentioned, part of what you're trying to do is you want to create freedom and you want to have those things in life that you want to achieve. But there's sometimes things just happen that you can't control. And once again, some of these stats are kind of astounding that over half businesses will transition unexpectedly, meaning that there's something that happens in life that causes their business to go a completely different direction than where it was. So we call those the 5 Ds.
Yep. So when we do our exit planning, we talk about that when we talk about contingency planning. But again, every business should have a contingency plan. So there are things on the list here, the 5 Ds that we'll at least have one of them. It's inevitable that we will experience one, but some of us experience others. So there's death, obviously, and that can have a negative impact on your business. I've had some pretty interesting experiences with it over time. One example that I talk about a lot, there was a three partner business, DBE, minority business enterprise. The one owner that was 50% owner of the company was the minority and died unexpectedly. There was not a funded buy-sell agreement in place. So a buy-sell agreement, it kind of spells out what happens in the case that one owner can't act on the other, and it spells out specifically the amount that the company will be purchased for or transitioned. And typically that agreement is funded with a life insurance policy or something like that, but it was not. And there was not a good relationship with the spouse either. Needless to say, that company lost the certifications, the contracts, and ultimately had to close. So those are some things to be mindful of when you're partnering, especially, but just think about how the business survives you.
One of the stories I like to share from a disability standpoint is, this actually happened at the beginning of COVID. There's a gentleman that I know that became really sick at the beginning of COVID, and he became incapacitated. Now, he was the sole owner of his business. And what ended up happening is no one could write any checks. No one could sign any checks because he had no provisions of power of attorney. His wife couldn't do it because she wasn't named in the business. All of their accounts basically got frozen. Now, had he passed away, it'd been a lot easier from the standpoint, and not to be morbid, but his wife could have had more control had he passed away than the fact that he was living. He couldn't do anything, and they were they couldn't pay payroll, they couldn't pay their vendors, and they were literally days within having to shut the business down because there was no access to the money, no access to the checking account. And all of this could have been prevented by just naming another person on the checking account. And these are the little things that we don't think about, and then you've got, this disaster this last year, can we all say disaster this last year? And how did we all get caught off guard because of that?
Absolutely. The next thing that impacts a lot of business owners is divorce. In Carla's case, the divorce resulted in half of her retirement assets going, but I've seen situations where a divorce can result in the ex-spouse walking away with half of the business. So you want to be very mindful of how things are structured and work with an attorney to put the right planning in place for that.
I had someone give me the advice when I was putting together one of my, early when I started Execuity, I actually had a business partner. And there are two things that the advice I was given, which I'm glad we did, which is plan for the exit in the event that you don't work out. And the second thing is, do you want to be in business with their spouse? And you need to ask that question when you're going into business with other people. And if you don't want to be in business with their spouse, then it's really important when you build your agreements that you plan for that. I went through an actual disagreement and a breakup of our partnership. All was amicable, but we really had to work through some tough issues in order to dissolve the business, or at least separate the business. And because we did some preparation up front, it became a lot easier to do. But these are the things that people don't understand. You could build this really big business that's worth a lot of money, and it could instantly kind of go away if one of these things happen, if you're not preparing for it.
That's right. Another thing to be mindful of, and I won't spend a lot of time here, other than pointing out that 37% have nothing saved, but the amount of people that don't have enough is even bigger than that. So we like to spend time making sure that you understand that gap in your lifestyle, and we'll kind of provide you with a tool for that towards the end of the presentation. Now let's revisit Carla. So first we've had her articulate total world domination. And she's starting to ask a lot of questions kind of coming out of COVID. Does she want to return to a 60+ hour work week? She's asking, where's her money? Revenue has increased. The company is growing, but her wealth has not. What happens if she loses her largest client? Most small businesses have a customer concentration. So what happens when that largest client walks away? If she wins all the projects in her pipeline, she'll need to hire new employees. If you are looking to hire right now, you know how difficult that is. And then you also know the time required to onboard those folks and make sure that they're ready. She's also set pretty aggressive growth goals for herself. So how does she achieve those goals? And what happens to the business if she becomes incapacitated? Who takes over for her? And will she have enough money to pay for her daughter's tuition? What we found is that many entrepreneurs are just like Carla. They have a lot of goals, a lot of plans, but need to define total world domination and then take inventory of their current situation.
So Alex, I have a question for those that are on the call, and you can call on whoever you want, or we don't know, it's maybe probably more of a poll, which is how many of you know your personal net worth? How many have taken the time to understand what you are financially worth at this point? Even if the number's small, have you taken time to do that?
You guys can put it in the chat. I can tell you straight up, I haven't done that in a while. So I'm really excited to hear about this. And I love what you guys said about the about the about the business, because it was so funny when I had resigned from my last company that exited. It was a multi-million-dollar company, and people were like, "Oh my God, you're like a millionaire." I'm like, "No, the company was a multi-millionaire, not me."
Well, and one of the things that we'll provide to everybody on this call afterwards is I'll provide you a link to this, but it's actually creating a personal financial statement. And it basically, and this is something that Shanda and I worked on together, it's nothing complicated, it's pretty straightforward, which is really trying to understand what are your assets, what are your liabilities, just like you have on your business. You know, you've got your balance sheet for your business that you have to maintain. Well, this is about a balance sheet for you and your life, and knowing, are you positive, are you negative? And in this case, we kind of created this for Carla, showing, you know, you've got your different accounts. And, you know, it's funny that I've gotten in the habit with my husband and I that we do this at least once or twice a year, that we go through and do it just to see if we've gone up or gone down on our investments and whether our net worth has changed. And it was particularly important when there was a period of time when my business had slowed down dramatically, and trying to figure out, are we really losing ground, and how fast a pace are we losing ground on some of it? But looking at what your assets are and understanding what you have in your different accounts, what type of insurance, if you have any. A lot of people don't, but it does get you thinking about, do I need life insurance, and what does that look like, and the different types of life insurance, you know, putting into account your real estate. And then you'll notice over here that on the business investments, it's blank. We've got a zero there because Carla doesn't know what her business is worth. Shanda, anything else you want to add to this?
Just one quick comment on it, just that something that I'd want to share from my lending experience. The composition of your balance sheet is just as important, or even more important, than that net worth number. So if your balance sheet consists of non-liquid assets, right? So not your cash, not your marketable securities and investments, but more real estate and other things, you can have a balance sheet where one person has, you know, $1 million net worth, but very little liquidity, and someone else that maybe has $300,000 net worth, and the bulk of that is made up of liquid assets. One of the one with the majority liquid assets, while that net worth may be lower, is a better candidate for lending. So just something to keep in mind. The composition of your balance sheet matters as well. And think about that on the debt side as well. So if you have mortgage loans, that mortgage is tied to an asset. If you have credit card debt, it's not tied to an asset, right? So there's a mixed match on your balance sheet. So you want to be mindful of those things as well, just the composition of the balance sheet as well.
Well, and the other thing I'll point out here, and this is, I'm trying dipping a little bit more into Shanda's world, is the balance between cash and retirement accounts. Women in particular save a lot of cash, and they don't let their money work for them. Mm-hmm. And they don't think that, and I'm not talking just retirement accounts, I'm also talking about securities and other things like that, that you're much better off taking cash and putting it into some kind of security account. Let your money work for you. Yes. Versus it just sitting in a cash account.
That's absolutely correct. And one of the biggest things that investing does is it is a hedge against inflation. So if you are, you know, anything like me, I'm doing a couple of projects around my home, and just thinking about the cost of materials and furniture and different things from, you know, 2 years ago when we looked at that until now, there's a significant increase. And so if your money is in cash, you're earning 15 basis points or so, nothing too sexy, an interest on a savings account. The cost of goods is growing at about 4.5% right now. That's the rate of inflation. So already you're losing spending power if you're not invested. And I'll get off my soapbox on that one. Because I
That's
can
a
go
whole
on
nother
about that all day.
conversation. That's a whole nother conversation, Alex. We'll come back for.
That's right.
This is a place where, once again, it's about taking ownership for it and really understanding where you are, because there's another part of this that I'm not going to get into today, but there's a whole piece that we add on to this when it comes to exiting your business, of understanding what do you need and what do you want. Because a lot of times when you're in your business is paying a lot of your lifestyle. And we forget about that when we go to calculate what we need in retirement, is that when your business goes away and you sell your business, it's no longer paying for your car. It's no longer paying for your insurance. It's no longer paying for, the trip or the extra bonus that you kind of put in there for yourself. And you're going to figure out what it is you really have to live off of. But one of the biggest parts of this, and some tips that we have, is really talking about paying yourself. And Sean, I'll let you chime in on some of these pieces.
Yeah, of course. So pay yourself, and pay yourself what you're worth, even in these extra, in your day to day. When I think about lending and the time I spent in that space, I would meet with business owners all the time that would tell me that they have not been paying themselves because they knew they were applying for a loan, or just a lot of different reasons. And the reality is, as underwriters, they add that salary back anyway, right? So they're not going to give you credit for the squeeze that you're living through. So you may as well pay yourself and start contributing. Our other recommendation is that you start taking money off the table, regularly. I know it is contrary to what you're taught and kind of what you feel when you're in the middle of that business. But you want to figure out some way to take money off the table. And that could be through retirement savings, which there's a tax incentive for doing some of those things, or simply creating what I like to call a wealth builder account. And if you think about the way your 401k works, where you benefit from small incremental contributions over time with a long-term investment strategy, you want to create something very similar to that for yourself. And for example, if you save the equivalent of paying yourself minimum wage for 40 hours a week, that's about $600 a week for 52 weeks. The savings there is about $31,000 a year. Over a 5-year period, even assuming a minimum return of 4%, that's $168,000 a year that you've been able to accumulate with market performance and compounding, the compounding growth and all of the things that take place there. So 168,000, not too shabby at six, if it only takes $600 a week to build something like that. Finally think about your legacy, right? Think about that North Star that Alex talked about, and what you want that to look like for yourself, and write that down so that you're very familiar with it. And then finally, find out what your business is worth, as it is a large chunk of your balance sheet, and understand the different levers that you can pull to increase or decrease the value of that company at any given time. And Linda is actually going to walk you through some ideas and some ways to do that.
So one of the things that many people don't realize is that for business owners, generally more than 70% of their wealth is tied up in their business. And business owners are traditionally the worst about savings and creating retirement plans. They are banking on the fact that the business is going to be their retirement plan. But the challenge is 98% have no idea what it's worth. They've never taken the time to figure out. They believe that there is this whole big complicated process you have to go through to understand your value. And but that's really not the case. There are some things that you can do to understand the value of your business and really understand what that looks like for you. And I always like to talk about that. How many of you guys been, you hear people talk about how much they sold their business for. And Alex, you mentioned it yourself, right? Which is, you built this $1 million business, and people have this perception that, if you build a business that's making, that's actually bringing in revenues. So let's say you've hit the 5 million mark, right? And so people look at you like, oh, wow, you have to have at least, that business has to be worth at least $5 million. Or you hear somebody else and you read those stories in the big startup world that, oh, it's sold for 10 times EBITDA, or it's sold for 5 times the revenues. Well, the reality reality is that's a rare occurrence, and it varies by industry to industry. It varies a lot by the different things and how your business has been built. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, and it's really important that you understand what those factors are and how that's going to influence your business. So, you know, Carla had no idea, and she actually, you know, once again, she was a big fan of Shark Tank, and so she had watched Shark Tank and thought, wow, okay, this is, you know, this is where I'm at. I've done some things. So, you know, she actually had annual earnings around $200,000. You know, she thought, okay, 5 times EBITDA has got to be pretty reasonable. So my business has to be worth $1 million at least. And so she went to get a valuation and try to figure out what that is. So one of the processes that I use, and it's something I do for businesses at no charge, just because I think it's an important piece for people to understand and know where they're at. And so there's actually a short little 15-minute assessment where you go out and ask a series of questions. And it works best for companies that are at least $500,000 in revenue. When you get a little bit lower than that, it's a little harder to have valuation. And this particular process probably works up to about $25 to $30 million in revenue. When you start to get higher, it starts to change a little bit and depend on the type of company you are. If you're a tech company, this will tell you some of the key indicators that investors will look at, but I've also figured out that the valuations are really going to be driven by the market and the type of technology you have. So it doesn't always fit, but it does give you a place to start. And there's 8 key things to that really goes into driving that value, which is, you know, financial performance is one of them. And financial performance isn't just about your revenues and your profits and all that. It's about how you keep your books. And I know as we start as business owners, a lot of times we do them, we may do them on an Excel spreadsheet. We may even go into QuickBooks, but we're doing it ourselves, but we've never really done bookkeeping or accounting before. That's going to be one of the places that an owner that a potential shareholder or investor is going to look at. The next thing is growth potential, and you know, where and how are you going to grow the business? Not just right now, but what does the market look like? Does it extend into other markets? You know, how much of the market share do I have? Am I in a big or am I in a niche kind of thing? Or is there crossover industries that I can reach to? The Switzerland structure, I love this because it's really about how independent or how dependent is the business on one employee, customer, or supplier. This is a piece, a lot of people think about employee dependence, they think about customer dependence, but they forget about supplier dependence. And depending on what kind of business you're in, this last year it could have really caught you off guard because your suppliers, you may have been dependent on one supplier, and all of a sudden that one supplier is no longer able to produce for you, and all of a sudden your business is gone because of that. Cash flow is always king. One of the pieces that really, and if you want more information, let me know. And I do have some of this out on some of the posts I've done, which is there's a difference between recurring revenue and reoccurring revenue. And recurring revenue is the most valuable piece. And if you can build a business that has consistent recurring revenue, think subscriptions and ongoing, like long-term contracts, that's recurring revenue. A customer coming back to you and buying from you every couple of times, that's reoccurring, but that doesn't have the same value as if I've got you signed up for a 6-month or a 12-month, or that you renew every single year. You know, control over the market is really important. Customer satisfaction plays a role into it, but here's the one that's really the most important, and this is where most business owners have the hardest time, and that is dependency upon you as the owner. And there are ways to evaluate, and there are some processes and things that you can kind of go through to understand that. So one of the things that comes out of this is actually a business valuation. And I always like to give my little disclaimers on the work that we do, is because there's multiple methods that we use. We take in NACES codes, or the different industries in building this. One of the things that's unique is it's actually measuring soft risk, which are related to those 8 things that we kind of talked about. And the better you perform on some of those things, the higher the strategic price you're going to get. And this is not an ask. There's multiple ways to value this, value a business. So this is kind of more of a, just really of a debt-free, cash-free basis of, and not necessarily about your direct assets, but really about the business is performing. So here's an example, and this is actually Carla's business that we kind of ran a scenario for, and it comes back and it shows for her, she's in a little bit below the average for the industry. And one of the things that I discovered, and I remember Shanda and I, when we first started going through this, I ran this thing and I was doing some work for one of her clients and trying to understand what this construction company was worth. And what I was shocked is how low the multiples are for construction company. You know, once again, think of that 5 times multiple. Well, in the case of a construction company, even the best are only like 2.5 to 3 times multiple on their EBITDA, their net profit. And your industry is going to dictate some of those multiples. And it's good to know what your industry does and what that looks like for that industry, because it does vary. Once again, my business is going to be different than Alex's business and different to Allie's business and Joan's business, because we're all in different industries, and that's going to dictate it. What also is always good to know is where you are today, but then also seeing a line of sight to that possibility of what it could be. And what are the steps and the strategies that you can take with that? So in Carla's case, you know, she realized how much work she still had to do, because she was definitely less than that $1 million mark that she really thought she was going to be. And keep in mind, she's at that place where she wants to get out of her business, and she doesn't, you know, is it too late for her to change, or she's probably going to have to put another 5 years into her business or more to get it up to the level that is going to allow her to achieve her dreams from a wealth standpoint. But what it also does is allow her to start thinking strategically about what those things are. And there's some accelerators that you can do and finding ways to increase the business. You know, for her, she could do acquisitions. You know, she could do a small acquisition that could double the value of her business. You know, she could do a pivot and actually find more recurring revenue opportunities. The type of construction work she does actually lends itself to maintenance agreements after the fact. So may actually sell something to you, but can I put a maintenance agreement on top of that, which creates a percentage of recurring revenue with the clients that she has. I know for myself, it's really challenging because I do a lot of project work. And so what I've been trying to work on the last year is really trying to figure out how do I create recurring revenue models. And a lot of that comes from like repeat subscription-based content, a lot of the other things that kind of go into play. But the big thing is she actually understood where she's at and what she can do. And once you get that idea of where you are, where you want to go, and what needs to be done, guess what? You have a much higher sense of control and the ability to control where you're going for your destiny. So what do you got to do to build and protect your legacy?
So one of the things that Alex said very early on that resonates with me, I say it all the time, is if someone's selling you a magic bullet to success, you should run, right? A lot of this is about discipline and staying honed in to what you're doing. So, and it's not, you know, rocket science, right? So dream about your future. You know, think about that North Star, know what total world domination means to you. It's a very simple step. And a lot of times we overlook it, but it's very hard to get somewhere if you don't know where you're going. Take inventory of your personal finances. So you want to complete the personal financial statement. I saw in the chat that there's some idea, some folks are sharing some of the apps that they use. Linda will share with you all the document that she and I kind of worked on that will help you do just that. And then you also want to know the business, know what your business is worth and how to increase that value. So I would take a look at the survey and the assessment that Linda has. It's, as she mentioned, it's about 15 minutes, and ask some pretty basic questions about your business, but it'll at least give you an idea of where you're working now. And then she can help you understand what different levers you need to pull to change that value one way or the other. The other thing that we talk about is making sure you're protecting that legacy as well. So you want to have someone maybe review your documents and spend some time with those things. If you don't have documents in place, you want to do that. So I'm going to list a couple of things that you should have. So you should have your buy-sell agreement. You should have an operating agreement. When I was a banker, I would see that operating agreement only when our clients were opening new accounts. They didn't really know, weren't very familiar with those. So you want to be mindful of that. You should have your wills, your trust, and power of attorneys in place as well. Those are the core documents that you need to protect your wealth. And then finally, you know, our recommendation is that you build an advisory board, right? So you want to have financial advisors, you want to have attorneys, you want to have other business owners that can advise you, and you all want them to have one basic mission statement. for you. And that should be to increase the value of your business and help you understand how to convert that value into personal wealth.
And by the way, it's never too early to start. A
Never
lot of
too
people
early
think
to
when you
start.
start your business, why do I need to start worrying about exiting my business now? If you understand the levers you can pull now, it becomes a lot easier and makes your business worth so much more if you think strategically about how do you build your business that gets you that type of revenue or that type of culture or that type of offering that is going to create higher value in the industry that you're in.
That's
So
right. And just to make that a little more concrete, if you're building a business, what the end result is for it to be an ESOP versus for it to be acquired by another third party, those are completely different business cultures. And the earlier that you can start working on that stuff, the better.
by the way, an ESOP is an employee stock option plan, if you didn't know.
Yes, sorry about that. Bankers and their acronyms.
We're all pretty bad about it. So once again, we'll be sure to share our contact information with you, and we'll actually send Alex links to all of the things we talked about today. So Alex, I'm going to let it kind of turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. We'll be following up as well as we do with all of our events with the recording and also the contact info to Linda and Shanda. If you have any follow-up questions, want to learn more about what they do. In the meantime, we have a couple more events in June that we are diving into around the numbers. One in particular is tomorrow. I think the tickets are still open for that free event, and this is kind of a follow-up to this event where it's getting into the nitty-gritty of the numbers, and that one's more particularly on your business, but it is something you can still leverage in terms of your personal, just thinking about the numbers. And then the following week, we're going to be talking about not business. We're going to talk about burnout and how to prevent burnout because a lot of us have been feeling it. And I think before we turned on today, we were talking about how often we'll just say, I'm good. But I think a lot of us are feeling the weight of what 2020 was and what 2021 early was. So we're giving a space so people can set that weight down and hopefully release it. And we're going to have an amazing, engaging event and have a coach come in and help us to really look at prevention, but also when you're stuck in burnout, how do you get out of it? But thank you all again. Super excited to have seen you, and then look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you again, Shanda and Linda, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.